Hey, look out. It is Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
What a pleasure to talk to this guy again, Glenn Pearson. He's there. If you're watching by Zoom, he's the one that just waved.
That's right. The one with the red shirt on.
If you're listening to the radio, he's the handsome one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyway, Glenn, how are you?
I'm doing great. We're trying to survive the whole COVID-19 situation, doing pretty well. So God's been gracious to us.
Everybody well. Now, you mentioned before we started that are all of your kids in California?
Yeah, I have two kids. Both of them are married, and my son has two grandkids. So we have 6 people out there. Everybody's healthy. Wow. Very, very active 3-year-old who is relentless in his energy. So it makes life a little tough to have everybody sequestered there.
Now they're locked down. Do they see, of course, here in Georgia, they're kind of relaxing that a bit. Do they see any of that at all, or do they see for the long haul?
Los Angeles has said that they're on lockdown till May 15th.
Wow.
So yeah, they're in it for the long haul.
Wow.
And once May 15th comes, everybody's going to be like, I'm out of here.
That's right. Well, the hairdressing and, the salons and all that. My wife decided to give me a haircut last week, and I think she did a pretty good job.
She did a good job. Yeah, looks good.
Well, she asked me to return the favor the other day, and I said, you really want me to do that?
You sure about that?
Yeah.
Let me get my clippers out, yeah?
I got a great
I think I'm going to be paying for this for the next couple of months.
I've got a great idea if you want to invest. Dan and I are going to open up a bowling alley, tattoo parlor, nail place, all in one.
That's
so
right.
we can
get
in there. Yeah.
Get everybody, yeah.
So if you're in.
Well, we can throw in some workout equipment, too, because you can go to gyms, too. So.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk to you a little bit about the pandemic, and also you have a gift. You've written a number of books and articles and blogs about demystifying evangelism.
Right,
and specifically, you've been talking about during this pandemic, that being an open door. Of course, we all know that a lot of folks experience fear and panic and, no, and still we're not out of it because of not only the sickness, but the economic situation that we're in. So where do you want to start off? How have you experienced this as far as ministering to people during this time?
Well, whenever something like this happens, a pandemic or, 9/11 or whatever, people are looking for ways to get involved and help out. And one of the ironies of the situation we're in right now is that the public health experts tell us that the best way to help is to not get out and interact with people. So it can be frustrating. I know some churches are doing some great things, and I don't mean to minimize that, but a lot of times people want to go out. Like a couple of years ago, Billy Burke and I, one of my best friends, went down to Albany, Georgia to help Samaritan's Purse with the hurricane relief. And we were going to go up to Nashville with the tornado stuff last month. And of course, that all stopped because of that. So people are saying, well, what can I do in this situation to make an impact for the kingdom? And this talk you reference I have called Demystifying Evangelism, it got me to thinking about that. And I think there's one really great way that we can have an impact on people by just thinking this through. So if you want to, I can just run through real quickly what those 3 points of the talk are.
Yeah,
let's do that. That'd be great, yeah.
Okay, right. Well, it's pretty simple, just 3 things. First of all, be intentional about relationships. I think we've made evangelism so scary. We feel like if I don't share the gospel with everybody I meet, that somehow I failed. Well, sometimes it turns into that, but it just starts by being friendly, by getting to know people at the gym or at work or at school, whatever. And sometimes it turns into chances to get a little deeper with them, and sometimes not. So first thing is just go out of your way to try to get to know folks. Second point is figure out how to turn the conversation towards spiritual things. And that's where this idea comes in. I'll come back to that in a second. The third point is once you get to spiritual content, what is it that you need to communicate? So it's really simple. Just be intentional about relationships. Try to turn the conversation around in a natural way, in an honest way towards spiritual things, and then know what to say when you get there. So what the application in this situation is, I was on cruise staff for 9 years, a long time ago, and they used to have a magazine called Worldwide Challenge. And back in 1998, they wrote a really cool article called 20 Transitions for Turning the Conversation to Spiritual Matters.
Hmm.
And one of the questions in particular works really well here. And that's when you hear about a problem, a tragedy, some difficulty somebody's gone through, just first of all, be empathetic with them. Don't, be dismissive. Just try to relate to where they're coming from. But at some point you can say, obviously this has affected you a lot. How has this affected or changed your view towards God?
Hmm.
And that's a great question, because what happens is it gets God on the table, it opens up the door to have that discussion. And then secondly, depending on what you hear, you can tailor subsequent conversation around whatever their needs are. If they're bitter or confused or whatever, you can help them think through that in a really natural way. So, this is something anybody can do. I can't run off and help Samaritan's Purse right now, and a lot of things I can't do. But every conversation I've had with people in the last 6 weeks has started with about 10 minutes worth of, well, how are you doing? How are you surviving? Are you affected by job loss, or do you know anybody who's gotten sick? So everybody's talking about this. Everybody's thinking about what life means, and what a natural transition to say, well, where does God fit into this?
And it's a matter of being intentional and
Yeah,
actually asking and actually caring what people have to say when they respond, right?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I start that talk by saying Christians and non-Christians have at least one thing in common. Both groups hate evangelism. And that's because we've made it so difficult, and we've made it such a thing, and we've made it so intimidating that I won't say nobody does it, but we could do much more with it. We could do a much better job if we just relax. And there are other, I'm not saying this is the end all and be all, but these three ideas just make all the sense in the world.
Glenn Pearson, author and all-around nice guy, and also he is a male model from time to time.
There you
Because
go. Not quite.
yeah, but we'll give you the info in a second how you can follow him and see more of his stuff. It's interesting, Glenn, because I mean the way you communicate this, even a talk show host could do it. I mean, it's natural to build relationships.
Right.
And I love that line. How has your view of God changed, if at all? I'd be interested to know, what have you found? What have they said? Is there a common thread? One of two or three? I mean, I would think somewhere in there would be, if God loves us, why is this happening? I'm sure.
Yeah, that comes up a lot, and that allows you to probe around at what their concept of God is, whether they see him as indifferent, or judgmental, or angry, or maybe not in control. So it really opens up the door to a discussion of who God is and what his characteristics are.
Just asking those questions. And Glenn, you're also in the medical field. What have you heard? What have you seen as far as the whole COVID thing goes? What are you?
Well, most of my information is coming from the media. I'm not directly working in the hospital field right now. I spent 24 years there, 30 years there actually, but now I'm working more in a consulting role. But I am on a couple of regular phone calls with people with medical devices. I guess the bottom line is that this is a serious situation. People are taking it seriously. All hands on deck. Everybody's doing what they can to get the personal protective equipment to people, trying to develop vaccines and all that. So, I mean, I don't have any magic information that most people don't have, but this is a big deal.
Glenn Pearson, we'll give your info here in a second, Glenn. What specifically you think God has spoken to you through this whole thing? I mean, besides evangelism, I think that's huge. It really, really is. And that's a part of you anyway. It comes out, whether there's a pandemic or not. But for you, what has God spoken to you, you think, through this whole thing?
I think, like a lot of people, it helps. He's reminding me what really matters in life. And, our kids are out of the house now, so it's just my wife and me. We've had much more time together, much more relaxed, just as a refocusing, making sure that what I'm spending my time on really matters. And for me, what I was just reading this morning, and John Ortberg has a great book called "If You Want to Walk on the Water, You Have to Get Out of the Boat." It's about 20 years old now, but he basically said, he talked about he's talking about people's calling, and he had a line in there that fits me perfectly. He says, if your calling in life is to learn, then you're going to express that through passing that along to other people. And that's what I feel God has called me my whole life to communicate with people the things I've learned about, him, first of all, but even my healthcare book that just came out in the fall. I spent 30 years working at the hospital. I want to let other people know how to do things right. So I guess, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just focusing on who I am and how I can help other people.
Have you had time to sit around and play some blues on the harmonica?
Yeah, I love doing that. And actually, one of the challenges that, I go to Sanctuary Church out in West Cobb, and I know you had Craig Bowler on a couple weeks ago. And we haven't been able to meet in person. So I'm awaiting a delivery right now for some equipment that allow me to tap into the recorded music thing that Sonny Lawlerstadt's putting together.
Very cool.
So I can do a little bit of harmonica stuff remotely, so to speak.
Awesome. We need to have Sonny on too. It's been a while since we've
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
Glenn Pearson. Glenn, you have a huge heart. We really love you and appreciate you're a great guest. You're full of information. We'd love to get back.
I'm full of other things too sometimes.
Yeah, that's what your wife said, but we won't go there. Okay, that's what she said. But anyway, let's get back with you in a couple of weeks. We'd love to check and even dig more into this stuff because I love the fact of your style, your spin on evangelism, which a lot of people say the same thing. Yeah. But I love it, and you communicate it well. So how can folks follow you?
Okay, my website is glennpearson.co. That's GLENNPEARSON.co, not .com. So glennpearson.co. My email, you can reach me at glenn@glennpearson.co.
Awesome. All right, we'll have a good time there, just being socially isolated with your wife, and we should interview her next time to see how you're doing.
Hopefully you won't get a story that's very different from what I'm saying. But you guys are always fun. I appreciate being on the call. So.
Thanks, Glenn.
Hey, we'll be right back. We got to take a break. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.